Jake's morning began like others before. He always woke up at 6 a.m., whether it was a work day or an off day. It was ingrained. 6 a.m., like clockwork. No matter how hard he tried, forcing his eyes closed as hard as he could, lying still in bed, nothing worked. None of the tips and tricks the internet suggested helped. He just woke up. I guess it was something to be said about routine, or just the inability to sleep. Despite it being too early to do anything fun or exciting, Jake still got up and readied himself for a relaxing day off. As he finished getting dressed, Otis, his playful boxer, burst into the room, making a beeline straight for Jake like he hadn't seen him in months instead of hours. It was petting time. "Oh, hey, there you are. Where have you been?" Jake asked, grabbing the rope they played tug-of-war with. They fought to see who would win. Of course, he always let Otis come out victorious. After losing another battle, it was time to watch a few shows from last night. Otis was lying at the foot of the couch, relishing his victory, chomping on a bone. A nice treat for remaining undefeated. Finally, Jake turned off the TV, and they were on to the next part of the day. It was time for an all-too-necessary food run. After all, he and Otis would need to eat something for the coming week. Stepping outside, the cool, frigid morning air smacked Jake across the face, his cheeks rosy from the beating they'd just taken at the merciless hands of the wind. It was a brisk morning. The wind swept over his body, continuing its violent assault on everything else around, battering the treetops and bending some nearly to their breaking point. It was unusually cold for this time of year. The wintry weather had shown up a few weeks earlier than expected, and much colder. Jake fought his way through the harrowing conditions, scrunching his body and providing less of a target mass for the wind to batter, rubbing his arms. It might be time to purchase a new sweater while he was out too, he thought. Approaching his car door, he clasped his hands together and blew hot air into them several times before retrieving the keys. He rushed to unlock it and climbed into the respite of his protected vehicle, turning it on and cranking up the heater, bringing it full bore. With the heat finally blowing through the vents, it was time to be on his way. He was already dreading the moment he would have to leave the warm, comfy confines. It was a quick 15-minute drive to the store, which was just enough time to get warmed up and ready to brave the weather all over again. Stopping at a red light and waiting for it to turn green, he caught movement out of his peripheral vision. Someone was outside, as crazy as that seemed. Glancing over, he spotted a homeless man lying down on a bus bench. It was one of those fancier ones, with a cover and glass sidings to prevent at least some of the wind, but it was still cold outside, and there was no real protection from that. The man lay, wrapped up as tightly as he could in several blankets. He had one hand poking out from underneath, which had a string tied to it. The other end was connected to a shopping cart containing what Jake assumed was the man's worldly possessions. The light turned green, and Jake drove off before the person behind could honk. As he drove, a thought ran across his mind. How must it feel not to have a roof over your head and a warm house to sleep in, especially on such a chilly morning? A pang of sadness hit him, but it was only for a fleeting moment. Over the course of the next week, Jake continued with his life like normal. He was not a particularly outgoing person, mainly keeping to himself. He'd come home from work, watch TV, and play video games. The bright spots of life were Otis and Stacy, his girlfriend. Jake and Stacy had been together for 2 years, and things had been going well, at least, from his perspective. So, it was a quiet, simple existence, just the way Jake wanted it. The following weekend, he would make his typical run to the store. On the way, he was once again stopped at that same red light. While waiting for it to change, his eyes caught the homeless man on the bus bench. Jake thought aloud, "At least it's not so cold today," while watching the man rifle through his cart. The light changed, and he drove off. While at work one day, Jake got into a conversation with his friend Miguel. They discussed a recent hurricane's damage to a nearby small town. Miguel talked about how their city had offered temporary shelter to the town's residents while the damage was being assessed and how repairs could be made. Another thought flashed through Jake's mind. He couldn't imagine what he would do if he'd lost everything he owned, all his worldly possessions. He initially dismissed the conversation as passing the time at work. However, later, his curious mind would eventually circle back around on the drive home. He began to wonder how he could get involved and help. It wasn't like they were half a world away, like in most cases when you hear about a disaster. No, they were practically in his backyard. Surely there was something he could do. He racked his brain, trying to figure out all the potential ways he could get involved. But once through his front door, and after absorbing a barrage of face licks, courtesy of Otis, all those thoughts evaporated as he sunk into his chair for several hours of mind-numbing video gaming. It didn't really affect him in any way, so why bother? Several weeks went by after Jake contemplated doing good deeds, but he stuck with his same tried and true routine. Work all week and have some fun on the weekends with his girlfriend and Otis. That was it. His simple, happy, uncomplicated life. However, he did wind up keeping an eye on the hurricane story and what was happening. On occasion, his mind would drift back to wanting to help. Miguel had even talked about how he and his wife drove down and pitched in at a shelter one weekend. But once again, he would not act upon those thoughts, falling prey to his routines. Although some of those routines were becoming more of a chore, he and Stacy had started to argue, which they had never done before. She was getting on his case about being too lazy and not doing anything with his life. Shortly after one of their fights, Stacy stopped by and saw Jake had not cleaned the house. This was the last straw for her. She blew up. He remembered the argument vividly. "Jake, really, you seriously couldn't clean up anything?" She huffed. "I was going to do it after I finished this game, honestly." Hurriedly, she started to pick up the trash off the coffee table while she continued. "You know what, Jake? This has been going on too long. I've been patient with you while you tried to figure out what you're going to do with your life. You always talk about doing this or that, but never do it. Instead, you just sit and play your games. Well, that's it. I'm done." "Wait, what?" Just like that. "Stace, you're done? Out the door?" He couldn't believe it after 2+ years. "Yes. You want to keep the job you hate and do nothing but play games and watch TV. You're not going to amount to anything in life just lying around, and I'm not sticking around with a loser like that. I'll be back tomorrow to get my things." She turned, slamming the door shut behind her. In a flash of an argument, Stacy was gone. Keeping true to her word, she returned the next day, gathering her stuff, and that was the last time he saw her. A couple of weeks after the breakup, it was time for another shopping trip. The biting cold weather had reared its ugly head again on this trip. Another cold snap, according to the news, would last several days. Once again, on the way to the store, Jake stopped at that same traffic light. He glanced over, hoping Mr. Bus Bench wouldn't still be there. Alas, his hopes were dashed. There he was, lying on the bench, huddled under 3 blankets. The light turned green, and he drove away with a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach, shaking his head. Again, though, he did nothing to help. Jake and Stacy had been broken up for a month, and he was not entirely over the whole thing. Her words about not doing anything with his life still rang in his ears, stinging his soul. He would mull those words over in his head from time to time. It made him start to feel like he was going through the motions of life and never achieving anything but never trying to accomplish anything either. Sure, he had plenty of free time and things in his life were simple. Work, Otis, games. He had a safe and easy existence, but was he genuinely doing anything with his life? While at work, he'd gotten into another conversation with Miguel. "Hey Jake, did you see the news about the earthquakes in Mexico?" Miguel asked. "I saw that. What's going on in this world?" Jake wondered. I also saw those hurricane victims are still displaced. All those people are still homeless. This is messed up. He shook his head. Yeah, right. I wonder what else Mother Nature has in store for this world, Miguel added. The conversation continued throughout the day. Later, he began to have that notion of doing something to help people instead of playing video games when he got home. He went online to research ways that he could get involved. Everything he found, though, would take time, which would affect how much time he had for himself, and none of them were simple or easy. Each had its own set of complications and other sorts of things he didn't really want to bother with. Yet again, he let another opportunity to help, or do something with his life, slip away. One day after work, he was walking up to his apartment when he saw his neighbor looking panicked. Her eyes grew wide with sorrow and fear as she ran up to him. Jake, thank God you're home. She paused, lowering her eyes. I have some bad news. Okay, what is it? Did your boyfriend break up with you again for the third time this month? Jake joked. No, but yeah, you're right about Jason and me. But that's not it. I'm so sorry, but Otis ran off. What? Jake screamed, causing Jasmine to flinch and cower back. Memories of Jason's volatile temper caused the reflex. No, I don't believe you. He wouldn't do that. The news punched Jake in the stomach like a prize fighter. How did that happen? How long ago? What direction did he run? He asked, firing off questions at the frightened woman. Well, I came over like I always do to walk him, she explained. I was only briefly, distracted by Zoe pulling on her leash. Zoe was another dog she walked. I didn't have a good grip on Otis. He saw a cat and took off after it. I'm so sorry, Jake. I didn't mean... Wait! Jake snapped, cutting her off. So he ran after a cat? What the hell, Jasmine? How long ago? About 3 hours ago. I've been searching for him ever since. I haven't been able to find him anywhere. Please don't be mad at me. Seeing her fear at what he might do, and the tears welling in her eyes, Jake calmed down. Well, let's try looking again and see if we can find him. If we don't, I need you to help me make flyers to hand out. Jasmine timidly nodded in agreement. They researched the neighborhood for another few hours until it got dark, forcing them to abandon their hunt. The next day, they placed flyers all over the community, hoping that someone would find dear Otis and return him. Miguel approached Jake at work a few days later. Dude, there you are. The boss was looking for you. He seemed pissed about something. He wants you in the office. All right, thanks, Jake said. I wonder what I did now. Yeah, man, you don't seem like yourself these last few weeks. Is everything okay? Miguel asked. No, not really. Stacy left me. My dog walker Jasmine lost Otis, and I haven't been able to find him. As if that wasn't enough. Jake somberly continued. Last week, I screwed up something major on a report that went to corporate. Dude, that's messed up, Miguel responded. Yeah, I am starting to think I'm cursed. Well, time to go see the boss and get my ass chewing. Which was precisely what happened. After having his dictator-like boss ream him for a while, Jake sulked back to his desk, replaying his conversation with Miguel about how nothing was going his way lately. Sure, he had a job, a place to live, family and friends, and he wasn't poor. He was not all that well off either. However, he still felt like nothing was his way. He contemplated if he was cursed or some awful person in a previous existence, leaving him to wonder what his place in life really was. Growing up, he had always felt that life had to have a purpose or meaning, and everyone had a mission or objective they were supposed to complete to make life meaningful. He wondered where along the way he'd lost that ideal. Was he just content with taking the easy track in life and nothing else? Was he meant to be an innocent bystander while everyone else around him did things with their lives? Why had it taken having so many losses for him to want to do something impactful in life? He began searching the job boards and applying to anything that seemed interesting. At the same time, He resumed his research into ways that he could make helping people a career and make enough money to live. He thought about going to the Peace Corps or joining the Red Cross and going abroad. As always, though, he never acted on any of these ideas. They didn't feel like they would make an impact big enough for what he was searching for. They weren't the easy world-altering impact he felt could be his purpose. Then, the day came that Jake had dreaded since his last meeting with the boss. He was fired due to his recent poor performance. He left work for the last time, initially feeling relief at being free from the place he hated. However, on the drive home, he was hit by a sense of panic. What am I going to do with my life now? He had never been fired before. It felt like his life was over at this point, and that Stacy was right. He would never do anything worthwhile. Over the last couple of months, everything had unraveled. His girl was gone, his dog was gone, and he had now lost his job. He'd finally hit his lowest point. The next day, Jake dragged himself out of bed. He really needed to get another job or be homeless soon. Trudging himself to the refrigerator to make something for breakfast, he realized there was nothing there to eat. Well, it's time to go shopping, possibly for the last time, he thought to himself. He stopped once again at that same blasted red light on the way to the store. There again was that same homeless man on the bus bench. Looking over, he was suddenly overcome by a dreadful feeling. That man very well could be him soon, with no one to help him, just as he never helped anyone else. Finishing his trip for what Jake figured could be the last time if he didn't find a new job quickly, he headed out of the store. The second he walked outside, it began to pour. It was like a monsoon dumping buckets of rain. The wind had picked up, blowing so harshly that the droplets were piercing the air horizontally. Managing to make it to his car and frantically loading the grocery bags, it was time to head home and get out of the hellish weather. Pressed up tight against the steering wheel, squinting, trying to make out the white lines in the road as pails of water cascaded down, thoughts began to circle in and around Jake's head. What am I really doing with my life? I could be doing so much more. I am a smart guy. I have skills and talents I could be putting to use. Money isn't everything, right? There must be a way to contribute to this world that doesn't include working for a corrupt corporation that only cares about profits. This can't be my purpose in life. I am just meandering through it and never doing anything important. I need to find my true place in this world. What do I have to lose at this point? How can I help and make an impact? I want to change the world. These and many other thoughts were zigzagging around on the neural pathways of his brain. Driving past the bus bench, he glanced over to find the homeless man doing the best he could to shield himself from the rain. As the light turned green, Jake set off. Suddenly, every fiber of his being was enveloped with a sense of altruism towards this man, the very same human being he had seen in the exact location for a couple of months, struggling through life, being beaten up by the elements. Yet, he never abandoned his bench. Jake quickly changed lanes, making a dangerous U-turn, especially in these conditions, driving back to the bus bench, pulling up beside it as close he could get, rolling down the passenger window. "Sir," he shouted, "my name is Jake. I don't think you want to be out in this rain any longer, do you?" The scraggy man shook his head, throwing droplets of rain from his waterlogged hair. "So, get in, and let's go somewhere dry and get a bite to eat." Are you sure, sir? I would be very thankful," the man said, briefly taken aback by this sudden offer of generosity. "Yeah, man, quick, get in, and let's go," Jake replied. Hesitantly, the man got in the car. "Well, you know my name, but I don't know yours. Where's your cart?" "It's dry." "Oh, and I am John," the man replied, shivering. He held his hands to the vent, embracing the warmth. "Well, John, it's nice to meet you. I hope you don't mind, but things are a little tight right now, so we're going to stop over at this McDonald's for that bite." "Sir, I honestly don't care where we go. I haven't eaten in a day, and I'm just glad to be out of the rain." When they arrived at the restaurant, Jake ordered a meal for them both. They nestled into a booth where John began to tell his story over breakfast. Jake sat on the edge of his seat, listening intently. John was a military veteran who had served several tours in Afghanistan. During his last tour, his wife decided that she'd had enough of military life. While he was defending the country, he received divorce papers. He later discovered upon returning home that she had cleaned out all of their bank accounts and moved in with the man she had been seeing behind his back, his high school best friend. Worse, the day before he departed Afghanistan, his truck was struck by an IED, causing him to lose most of his vision in his left eye and permanent nerve damage to his left arm, leading to a medical discharge. Afterward, with nowhere to turn and unable to find work, life just led from one bad thing to another until he found himself broke and homeless. Jake sat without saying a word. What could he say honestly? His life's struggles to this point paled in comparison to the man sitting across from him, feeling sick to his stomach for having thought earlier that his life was so horrible. Upon hearing the tragic story, he had no idea what to do, but he felt a burning desire to help this man in some way, somehow, any way he could. Wow, John, I don't even know what to say. Tell you the truth, Jake, I have pretty much given up on life. After 3 tours of duty, I don't think I have any fight left in me for this world, the veteran said, folding his arms in front of him and bowing his head. Man, you can't give up. You have to push through. You've been through so much that maybe good things will happen to you now. Jake sensed that John could be possibly thinking about harming himself. There was no way he could let that happen. I don't know. I just don't know if it's worth it anymore, John replied, gazing out the window with a 1,000-yard stare. He had to do something. He couldn't let this hero give up on life. Look, I can't give you much, but I've got like $50 on me, and I want you to have it. Jake pulled out his wallet, rifling through it, retrieved the money, and pushed it across the table to the wounded man. At least let me take you to a community center, or even better, the VA can help. No, I'm good, John responded, somewhat offended. I don't need to have people looking at me with pity. He refused the money. No, I get it, Jake said, feeling that John was about to get up and leave. He'd seen this type of defiance and proudness before. I have a friend that was in the service, and I know you all don't like asking for help, but sometimes all we need is just a little hand up that can lead to hope and get you out of this. The veteran sat quietly pondering, finishing the last bite of hash brown. Okay, I'll go, he said, albeit reluctantly. Great, Jake exclaimed, almost leaping from his seat. And please, take this. He offered the money again, to which John accepted. Jake took him to the VA and gave him his number, telling him to call any time for anything. He went home that night feeling something he had never felt before. He felt whole, like he had finally done something that mattered, a sense of fulfillment, completeness. The next day, he woke up with a new energy for life. He investigated that community center he told John about and signed up to volunteer. He suddenly had a lot of free time on his hands, so why not do something with it other than playing video games? One day, when Jake was returning home from the center, Jasmine rushed over and told him that Otis had been found and that they were bringing him over. Jake was so relieved he was getting his little buddy back. The weeks would continue to pass as he spent most of his time now at the center doing his volunteer work while looking for jobs. He loved what he was doing, and he felt something changing in his life. He had received a couple of job offers, eventually taking the one offering the least amount of money, but leaving him the most time to continue volunteering. Jake was astonished by how things in his life had changed, and he even took a chance and started a new relationship with a fellow volunteer. After a time, Jake was settling into his new life of meaning when he received a phone call. Jake, this is John. Do you remember me? Yeah, man, of course I do. How's it going? Jake replied, happy to hear he was still alive and hadn't given up. Great, actually. Really, really good. I just wanted to give you a call and say thank you. You really helped me out and brought me back from the brink of doing something terrible. I just wanted to let you know that I am doing much better now. I got a job and am getting a place to stay, John informed him. Man, that's great. I'm so happy things turned around for you. Good job. Thanks. I wanted to ask you a question. Sure, go ahead. Anything. I wanted to ask, why did you stop that day? Jake paused for a few moments before answering. You know, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure. All I know is that I had seen you out there almost every week for a couple of months. And that day, I felt the need to stop. That's all I can tell you. Well, I guess that's a good enough reason for me. I just wondered. But again, thanks from the bottom of my heart. You helped save and change my life, and I will be forever thankful. Maybe one day we'll get to hang out. I'd like that, man. I'd really like that, Jake replied. The two hung up. After the conversation, Jake replayed that day in his head, wondering where that sudden urge to help came from just as he'd realized he'd been approaching life all wrong. He always thought he had a purpose. He knew deep down he was meant to make an impact, but he felt he needed to save the world to make his life meaningful. Suddenly, he now understood. He didn't need to change the world on a grand scale and do so in one night. All he needed to do was change it for one person. How do you change the world? The answer was clear. One person at a time. One person changes the world for another, who passes that on to another. Slowly but surely, one good deed and act becomes thousands, then millions, then billions. But it must start with one. Jake had found his purpose, his meaning. He'd changed the world by helping one person.